Thank you very much, Heather. We are working to get a copy of that 1042 call. You say that there's a lot of emotion. We want to hear that audio and let our viewers hear that audio, so we're working to get that.
Yeah, I hope so. I know Heather had to experience that out there as well, and I know she's been there since day one, so just a shout out to her for being with us, and it's much appreciated. I know it's hard, and it affects all of us, and we appreciate what you're doing out there, Heather, John, and Rondell as well.
Now, as the procession is heading down to Sullivan, they'll see a lot of signs from the community showing their support. We've seen some really neat tributes that businesses have put together. Certainly, two cities will be coming to a standstill momentarily, Terre Haute and, of course, Sullivan. The next stop, now, maybe it isn't a stop, maybe it's just a pass-through, will be at the Garrison Flag. Tell us about that.
So the route is clear right now. Nothing is allowed, even if cars may have snuck through in the meantime before the procession gets there, nothing is allowed to pass underneath that Garrison Flag until after the coach passes underneath it. And then obviously the escort itself will be able to pass underneath there. It's held up by two of the ladder trucks from the fire department. It's 40 by 60 foot. It is a very painstaking process, believe it or not, to get that up. Especially, I saw the wind out there a little bit ago. It's very hard, and it's actually quite dangerous. It's not. It may look like a flag gently blowing in the wind, but it is 40 by 60 is a lot of material, very heavy, and then extended fully by those ladder trucks. And then there's specifics when it comes to the Union, which is the blue part of the flag. It's got to be at a specific point, whether it's pointing east or north. It's got to be one of the two. So they have to get it right, and again, it's not an easy task.
What an impressive sight, though, that beautiful flag waving in the wind. That'll be just gorgeous. And again, ceremony, tradition is steeped in that tradition with the firefighters involved and the flag, and then the coach will proceed under that.
Yes.
Okay. We want to let you know that this will be a long process, a long procession, a 26-mile procession with nearly 600 vehicles involved between motorcycles and cars, police vehicles from all over the state, all over the country, and impressive sights that we've seen of children that are waving flags and so forth. I love to see those scenes. My colleague, Rondrell Moore, is waiting out at the cemetery in Sullivan. Let's join him now. Rondrell?
All right, Patrice and Scott, we want to take you now. We are live at Southridge Cemetery in Sullivan, and John is our photographer now. If you can go to my right now, you will see the honor guard coming in. That's the advance guard, members of different police departments advancing the funeral party. This is not the specific funeral party. We do know that they are on their way to the cemetery. And as you can see, they're filing in. This is a very meticulous ceremony that they are preparing for. You just kind of went back behind me, if you'll go, John. You can see this is where the family is going to be sitting of Officer Robert Pitts. And behind them will be members of the community, civilians of that nature. In front of them, near the gravesite, that's where police will be. And again, this will be a very specific ceremony. You can expect to hear taps and Amazing Grace and color guard presentations and several things that are really meant to honor the life of Officer Pitts. And this is something that is not very different than what you would see at any fallen officer's ceremony. I spoke with organizers of this specific burial ceremony, and he said that the funeral party, consists of about 486 vehicles, and so they are taking US 41 and they will be coming to this cemetery. Once they get here, police officers will be able to escort the funeral party to this specific place. All members of the community, the Sullivan community, the Terre Haute community, and just all over the Wabash Valley, they'll be able to come as well. They'll be parked as well, but they'll be pushed to a specific section. And again, members of the Indiana State Police Department, they will be working on that. Now, I did speak a little bit earlier with a member of the Patriot Guard, and I'm going to ask my colleague Garrett Brown if he can go get him right now. And he has a connection to Officer Pitts, and he wanted to talk about why it was so important that we honor. But I just kind of wanted to tell you a little bit about the mood that's been here since I've been here. Even though the party has not gotten here as of yet, there have been several people, members of the Indiana State Police Department, going over the things that they'll be doing in the ceremony. As we mentioned, the 21-gun salute. John, if you could, I want to show you a little bit over that direction. You can see there's a stand for the Salvation Army. Yes, the Salvation Army is here. They've been giving out water. They've been giving out food. just to all members of local law enforcement to make sure that they're hydrated. This has been a very long day. It's been a labor of love, but it's been a day that they've been wanting to do for quite some time. It's been a service that they've been trying to do for quite some time, that is. And it's that service to the community that the police officers are thankful to do. A quick story for you. While we were here, we were right next to US Highway 41, this entrance of the cemetery, and there was a vehicle that pulled up near a group of Indiana State Police officers who were preparing for the ceremony. That vehicle just pulled up. We weren't quite sure what was getting ready to happen, but a man got out of the vehicle, came up to the police officers, and extended his hand. Now, obviously, stopping on the side of the road, not necessarily the safest thing to do, but on a day like today, it's something that officers definitely appreciate. So we have John Gibbons just off to my right, and he's going to come in and we're just going to talk to him a little bit. And John, you are with the Patriot Guard, that's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so talk a little bit about what you do and why it was so important for you to come out here today.
Right. We serve the people that protect us. We honor them, we help them, whatever we can do to help the families to get through bad times like this. We feel that if everybody just said a kind word, shook an officer's head, said thank you, that means more to an officer than anything you could ever do for him, because that builds his pride, that builds his character, that makes him see that the community is behind him and supports him. And that's what we do. We try to educate people to know that they do exist, they do matter. They are part of us, they are part of the community, they keep going when times are tough.
And talking specifically about Officer Pitts, such a mainstay in two communities, really, the Terre Haute community and also the Sullivan community, just from what you know of him, how big of an impact did he have?
He had a very big impact. He was one of the kindest hearted persons you ever want to meet. He always had a good word for everybody. He had a good sense of humor. He had a good balance. He loved his family. He loved his communities. He was born and raised around here, and he wanted to serve the people in this community, and that's what he did.
Well, and just one last question for you, John. You're a member of this community as well. What has been the mood since last Friday? Obviously, it's been a very sad event that's happened, but just what have you noticed just from the community?
A lot of outpouring, a lot of support. A lot of people was taken back by such a senseless act. They want people to understand that these officers are the best there is. They do what they do because they are proud of their community. They are proud of their honor. They do what they do because they love us all.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking some time just to talk with us. And I just wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what John just said just now. I spoke a little bit earlier to Scott McDaniel. He's one of the directors of the ceremony that's going to be happening here. Unfortunately, he's had the task of doing several of these funerals, several of these burial ceremonies. And he said, while speaking to the media a little bit before, he said that he has never seen a community like the Wabash Valley in terms of how much the community has given. For the visitation, he said he's never seen as much food that was donated. Just another example of how caring, how much compassion, of how much love this community is capable of showing on even the saddest and the most tragic of times. The Wabash Valley does what it needs to do to give back to the community, and that's exactly what Officer Pitts did. Patrice?
Well said, Rondrell. Thank you very much. We are heading out now to the memorial where the car is located there at the police headquarters, and they're about ready to move this. Tell me why.
Not really sure why they're moving. They may be putting out further a public display. They may be taking it to the cemetery. I'm not sure of the reason. They could be going to get it detailed and putting it back there. It may be reassigned. I'm sure it will be reassigned. Or an officer specifically wanted and was granted permission to take that vehicle out there.
Now, you are looking at Officer Rob Pitt's car, an unmarked car. They will have retired his badge, correct? Badge 196. But what about all of the mementos, the flowers and so forth that were on this car? This was the memorial there at the headquarters.
Right, those will all be kept, and until decided by family and THPD, because I guarantee you there'll be many family and fellow officers and community who may want a remembrance, a memento from that, whether they placed it or somebody else did, and that would be up to the family and THPD to decide if that's going to be given back or kept.
There were notes there that were specifically to Rob, some notes there specifically to the Terre Haute Police Department as a whole, some notes to Rob's children, especially to 5-year-old Dakota. Those will be kept. Of course, the flowers that were on there will die over time. There were angels, statues of all sorts of things. There was a beautiful stone there talking about giving the ultimate sacrifice and service.
So that'll all be kept, whether at THPD or what will happen often is when the officers do go out to Washington, D.C., it'll be taken out there as well, and then we know it'll be stored in the museum out there as well. One thing that you had asked me about earlier, and I was remiss in not stating, did you know that the Police Memorial Wall is the only monument in Washington, D.C. that will never be finished?
That's
and
a sad...
Take a minute to...
Yeah,
but
it is conclusion. Speaking of, let's take a few moments to reflect on the life of Officer Rob Pitts.
Honor Guard! Officer! Action! I thank you sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, for being here tonight to show your appreciation for our hero, Rob Pitts. Rob ran into danger in order to save one of his fellow officers.
He made the ultimate sacrifice, and with that, we are so grateful for his life. We're so grateful for his service and the protection that he gave not only us, but all those around him.
A beautiful tribute to Officer Rob Pitts by the wonderful people here at News 10 that put that together. Snippets from vigils there in Sullivan, in Terre Haute, at the memorial. It's a community that is just so gracious and so kind.
It's community in your station. In the very beginning, you may not want me to say this, but when we stood around and had a prayer and a thank you, that's what community is. That's your internal community within here. And again, I can just tell you on behalf of our Critical Incident Memorial team, man, thank you so much for your station, for doing this. All the people that are involved probably didn't sleep, and I know it's a very physical and psychological, painstaking process. Much, much appreciated, though.
Well, thank you. Just like you have a brotherhood and a family, we have a brotherhood and a family here at News 10 as well. And just like the gentleman with Rondrell said, just shaking a hand, saying thank you, that really uplifts the men and women in blue.
It is. I'm telling you, when it comes to police work, that's better than winning the lottery, to get that simple thank you, especially from a little kid or a high five from a little kid. Even better yet, when a little kid, or anybody for that matter, but specifically a little kid, knows your name. And even more so, when you can say his or her name back to them, they will never, ever forget that. Even if the paths never cross again, they will never forget that. And neither will we.
Well, and it's setting the precedent in their young lives to know that police officers are good people.
We are.
Will protect you.
We are.
Speaking of children, you know, a lot of the schools, especially in Sullivan, the Northeast School Corporation and the Southwest Sullivan School Corporation in Sullivan County, they're dismissing early so that their young people can take part in this day to watch the procession come through their town.
That will mean a lot to the officers, I can tell you that. Unfortunately, it's going to be a very emotional moment, multiple emotional moments. The officers driving the car, kind of hard to do when your eyes are all teared up as well. Many of us have been there, done that. Well,
and because you've been there and done that, you'll probably remember too, as you've been involved in this procession, that tonight when they go home, it'll all be a blur. It probably flew by, the children along the road and things that went by. They'll have to take time to reflect on that.
It will. I mean, some people can immediately recognize, others it may be, a week or two. others maybe a year or two. Each person is different. That's why we're individuals. And again, the impact that it has on each officer and each family member within that officer's family, they're all different, but at some point in time, there is impact, there is notice.
One of the pictures that we saw in that very moving piece just seconds ago was of Rob's mother and his daughter there at the service, the vigil there in Terre Haute, and of course of Chief Plassey talking about his buddy. That's his buddy.
Yeah, very difficult. And imagine, you know, I looked at the mom and daughter. Imagine losing your son or your daughter or your father, and man, that's just so emotionally taxing and tough on them. And then hear all the other family that you've now inherited, so to speak, speaking about your son or your father.
Rob leaves behind a mother and a father, even a grandmother and great-grandparents, they were saying at the funeral. Still has great-grandparents living, 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, a brother and a sister he leaves behind as well. So a full family that will just cherish his memory, I'm sure, forever.
It is, and this is just adding to the many layers of emotions that they're going to have. I mean, it just seemed for the last 5 days now, it's been one thing after the other, on top of the very worst news they could ever have. So this is going to be very overwhelming for them, all the way for the next couple hours at least, and then after.
You saw video of them moving Rob's car from the memorial there at the police headquarters, and you said maybe one of the options is to detail it along that line. You know, we talked about community support and community being so generous. A number of local car washes were offering free car washes yesterday and today to all first responders because they want their vehicles to look pristine for this procession.
They did. I went this morning before I came here, and I had my money out, and the guy was like, "Put that away." That was really neat.
That's like a handshake almost, isn't it? Saying
that was thank you. I was we had a thank you war back and forth, and it was like no thank you, no thank you. But that you don't have to do that. Why would you? But that means so much.
Oh, that's another example of the community coming together. I know that some barber shops were offering free haircuts to the men and women, first responders that wanted to look great for today's services. And again, you're looking at signs from the community saying thank you. We will always remember you, Officer Rob Pitts. Thank you to your family. Thank you to your Terre Haute PD family. And fly high, right? Fly high.
I like that, with the wings.
He will be getting his wings. There's thank you for your service, Officer Rob Pitts. Rest in peace. All of the local banks, local restaurants, local schools, all coming together. There's one at West Vigo Middle School, all coming together. And again, teachers can use this as a time of teaching, a time of education.
I think people should talk about it. This should not be expected ever, no matter whom it happens to. When you talk about police officers out there, we swore we would do on what we do on your behalf, and for this to happen, this has to be a conversation. It's no more head in the sand and pretend it's never going to happen again, because we know it is. We don't want it to. Again, one is one too many, but we can't ignore this, and if we try to keep it from the kids, it's going to come back to haunt us.
Well, and perhaps this can be the something good that comes out of it. You can't keep it from the kids. You have to educate them on this.
Kids are a lot smarter these days than I know when I was 50-some years ago, you know, with the kids. And if you try to hide that or even sugarcoat it with the kids, it's not going to fare so well later on in life.
Well, and as several officers mentioned in the funeral, you know, it's time for change. Be the change. Show love. It was a great message that was given by several of the officers there.
It is, and the main message: stop shooting, stop the violence, stop shooting us, stop shooting everyone. Why? There's got to be another alternative other than that final alternative, and it's wrong.
Well, what's nice, of what is good about coming out of in this is showing the community support. The community's coming together. I guarantee there are thousands of people lined up along that parade route, both here in Terre Haute and in Sullivan, and we'll see more moving pictures of children and adults alike, saluting with their hats off, waving a flag, whatever they choose to do.
Yeah, I'd love to see those pictures.
We are going to head back out here in just a moment for some more live coverage of that procession. We're also working to get you the audio of that last call, very emotional last call from the dispatch division here in Terre Haute. There will be, and we also have a live unit as well at the Garrison Flag. That will be the next, not stop, because they'll just keep going, the procession under that Garrison Flag.
I've seen families want to stop there and take that in as well. Again, we don't want that to happen, but if it does, then it does. And again, this is about the family, and this is the last time they'll ever pass underneath that Garrison Flag. So it's not ever wrong.
And the protocol is that only the procession can pass through that?
Yes.
Okay. The procession is made up of 574 vehicles at last count.
At last count.
Many of them are motorcycles, as many of you saw at the very beginning. The lead motorcycle was Rob's motorcycle with his best friend on there. Great tribute.
Great, yeah, and that's a phenomenal looking motorcycle. I mean, that's a work of art there on top of everything else. I can see why Rob was proud of it, and his best friend's riding it.
Many local florists have been working hard the last few days up until this point, putting together the flowers for the funeral, for the tributes, even flowers here for our station that we can pay tribute.
It is, you know, I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because a lot of people don't realize, we talked about the moving parts behind the scenes. So many businesses, I mean, there was food, not just for the family. I mean, they were never wanting for any food or water or anything else. Same thing with the Honor Guard room, and then visiting officers from elsewhere. So much community and businesses, the support. It's not just the thank yous. It's again, the car washes, the food. And when I look at the primarily ladies survivors from our COPS organization in Indiana, that is one of the components that like never ends. They never sleep. They make sure not only the new survivors, if you will, but the existing survivors, and more importantly, the cops who they've known us for years. We have one who was a national president, Molly Winters. She's known me since I was a young one, and still asks me to this day, "How are you doing?" She lost her husband. I should be asking her that, but this is how predominantly ladies typically operate within the concerns of police survivors. That's what they do. They care about everybody else.
About your well-being.
They do. I can't comprehend that for whatever reason. How they do it, what they do, and never complain about it is beyond me.
Very nice. If you are looking for a way that you can pay tribute to Rob Pitts and his family, there is an official memorial fund at Fifth Third Bank locations all across the Wabash Valley. We also want to tell you that there is a fallen officer memorial blood drive that's being held today from 7:30 a.m. Actually, it's over by now, but it was held today at Sullivan Courthouse, a fallen officer memorial blood drive, and it's, of course, to honor the Terre Haute Police Department and, of course, Rob Pitts, who was killed in the line of duty. Some are saying, you know, give the gift of life. Life was taken, but in this case, giving the gift of life. But there's all sorts of ways that people can show their tribute, give their tribute. We want to show you the map of the parade route. Again, the procession is going down this route, 13th Street to Erie Canal. It is about a 20-mile route down Erie Canal to McDaniel, then ultimately to 641 South, to 41 South, all the way to Sullivan. And then those 500-plus vehicles will proceed through Sullivan on Section Street to Washington, Wolfenberger, and ultimately Johnson, and they will end at the Center Ridge Cemetery for the committal service there in Sullivan, where Rondrell Moore is, and will bring us more once those vehicles arrive. Now, he had said seconds ago that the head vehicles were there, the guys that went ahead. Yeah,
so that's the advance party.
Advance.
They have specific setups. They'll be out there doing practice for the 21-gun salute. The bugler may be out there practicing, the bagpipers. Again, there's many moving parts that are involved in this, and I'm sure Rondrell maybe even noticed some spots on the ground that were specifically marked where people need to be, and that's all required. You probably saw some things you may not have seen before when you were like You probably saw the lid to the vault was off to the left when they
I did
panned
see
on the
that.
Salvation
I did see
Army.
it.
And then you saw where it was on the actual ground itself where they're going to set the casket. And that's based on the amount of people that we have to be able to fit everybody in. And all the ceremony, everything will take place at that specific point in time. That is not going to change whatsoever. But there's still another component when it comes to the vault, and these are family wishes as well too. Some people don't care if the vault lid showed, but I can assure you that vault lid probably has Rob's picture engraved, his badge, Terre Haute PD, maybe his unit number, things of that nature will be on there. Again, this is totally up to the family. Maybe if you would reach out to them later on after this to maybe have, because they have that, they have pictures and stuff of that as well. Some people never get to see that, but that again is the funeral home and the cemetery and the people who make, design and do the artwork on the vaults will often donate that, and that's probably what happened in this case.
Very
but
nice.
Is awesome artwork.
I imagine. Now, and maybe you can't talk to this, but the cost, does the family get help from the department or from the FOP in general?
So yet again, yes, many components, not just the national FOP, but local FOP. But more importantly, the ball gets rolling, for lack of a better term, with our Indiana cops, concerns of police survivors. These, predominantly women, know it like the back of their hand. They walk the family through the entire process, because unfortunately they've been there, done that as well. But they're simply paying the pains that they've had forward. I can remember when Molly lost her husband, she didn't have any of this. It just kind of haphazardly started. Now there's processes when it comes to insurance, payments, education for the children. So you're talking from the grassroots level right here in Terre Haute all the way up to the national level in Washington, D.C. That the Indiana cops kicks in, and then plus other insurance things and stuff like that as well, not just with Terre Haute but elsewhere.
And they'll follow that family along, follow 5-year-old Dakota, for instance, up to adulthood.
So Dakota and the other family will be all known as survivors. So Dakota, for the rest of his life, will be a survivor as well. They actually have kid camps and things like that our police survivors host and put on. There's just so many things you couldn't even begin to imagine. And I've known it for years, and I still am amazed by what they do, not just for great-grandma, all the way down to a 5-year-old boy, everything in between.
Very nice. That shows that brotherhood. If we could take a few moments to reflect again on Officer Rob Pitts. You know, my colleagues here at News 10 have worked very hard to put together so many pieces of reflection that are just beautiful. Take a look.
Officer Robert S. Pitts courageously stood his post for almost 2 decades.
But everybody needs to understand that this is going to be a very difficult time.
These guys are giving their lives, and they need our support, and they need the community to come together and help them out.
Anytime we've needed help, Terre Haute Police Department's been here to help us. So we want them to know that we're here with them too.
Another beautiful piece reflecting on the life of Officer Rob Pitts. We will show those throughout. They are a culmination of basically the last couple of days since the words "officer down" on Friday night, through the weekend, and to this point. Certainly moving pieces.
Sure, and these are some things that the family may not be able to grasp at this point in time or may not have the opportunity to see, and you've helped capture that for them. So there will be some point in time where the family's going to be able to see and, like me and everybody else, appreciate what you've done.
Well, and hopefully the purpose of that is so that someday they smile when they see that rather than tears.
Yes.
Smiling would be nice.
Yes, and this is the clinical, literal thumbs up thank you, not just from your station, but from the community as well. You're being the spokespersons for the community, believe it or not, to us.
Well, we are honored. We would love to be able to watch that procession. We're going to be heading out here soon with Aaliyah Blackburn. She is at that Garrison flag. I'm trying not to get a tickle in my throat. She is at the Garrison flag. The procession will follow under that flag, and there's a lot of history to that and a lot of tradition to that.
There is. So again, with most of the stuff that we were talking about, whether it's the salutes, and which we'll talk about, I'm sure, a little bit later, there's a lot of theory and speculation that's involved. But one thing that people don't know is, and you heard it earlier, is we have the fire department intimately in many things. The majority of people doing the seating there with our however many thousands of people we had there, predominantly fire department. Fire department also involved with the garrison flag. Quite frankly, we don't have ladders on our squad cars, but that is a very dangerous and hard to do process, hoisting that garrison flag. Now, we've seen it over buildings and things like that, but a 40 by 60 catching wind is no easy feat by any means. And when you put it up on ladders, that's hard to do. So much appreciated, and a shout out to our fire departments as well.
Well, that brotherhood, though, is all first responders, right? Conservation officers, fire department, police department, sheriff, everyone.
Yes. Again, I wish people would have the opportunity, and I'm certain many did, to see that garrison flag being deployed and hoisted. It's also a feat as well to get it back down after everybody has passed through.
Looking back to that beautiful funeral service, was there some tradition that stood out to you, or anything that really stood out? The Amazing Grace was just that. It was amazing.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest parts was, a policeman lost his life today. The reason why I cannot say that part always sticks with me. It does not go away because there is no reason. Nobody can say why this happened, why it should have happened, because it shouldn't have.
Senseless, just senseless. My partner Rondrell Moore is live there in Sullivan at the cemetery as he awaits for the coach to make its way there. Rondrell?
Well, and since it's been about 15 minutes or so, Patrice, since we last spoke. If you look by me, you can see the cemetery is starting to fill up. Again, we have had members of Indiana State Police here for quite some time, but now members of the community are starting to show up. I told you a little bit earlier about the Salvation Army doing everything they can, giving out food, giving out water, just to help out anybody who needs it. But members of the Honor Guard have arrived. We saw them just moments ago, going over the steps that they will take as they take the flag from the final resting place of Officer Pitts. That will be a part of the ceremony as well. But again, the mood is very somber, but as much as it is somber, it is also very compassionate. And that's something that we will be seeing, and I believe we've seen throughout most of the day. These are people, these are neighbors. And some of these are complete strangers of Officer Rob Pitts, but they are just doing anything they can. John, I don't know if you can, but behind us is U.S. Highway 41. There are a couple of cars that are just lined up. You see an American flag on what looks like a lawnmower behind us, but just people in this community. We know that we're in Sullivan County right now. They're doing anything that they can. And as you see the flag flying in the breeze, you'll notice that the wind it's a pretty significant wind right now. Fortunately, that wind has not brought rain with it at this point. We know that rain was in the forecast. Kevin Orpert talked about that for the last couple of days, but at this point the rain has looked to stay away, which has made actually for some pretty pleasant conditions as the community gets ready to say farewell to Officer Rob Pitts. Again, you just see some of the people who have showed up already, and when we spoke a little bit earlier with Scott McDaniel. Again, he is, I guess you could say, the guru of this ceremony that's getting ready to happen. He said that from the time that the funeral party leaves Holman Center and they actually take their route to Center Ridge Cemetery here in Sullivan, he anticipates it taking a good hour and a half or so. Obviously, roads have been shut down for that procession to happen. But once they get here, they will go to the main street throughout the cemetery, and then escorts will stop them, and they will take care of the parking for the funeral party. After that, civilians, they'll make sure that they are parked as well. So it's a process once they arrive here, which, like I said, he expected that whole process to take an hour and a half. But then once they get here, that could take another 15 to 20 minutes. And so at that point, they will then start the official ceremony, and like I mentioned earlier, that will include taps, that will include Amazing Grace, a very touching tribute, that will include words, and it will also include a presentation from Terre Haute Police Chief John Plassey to the family. It's not something that anyone ever wants to see, the death of a police officer, but those who are in charge of this program are making sure that since it has to be done, it is done with the most honor, with the most reverence, and with the most respect. So we'll check in with you here in just a couple minutes. I hope to speak to that expert so that he can give you more insight. But we're going to go ahead and send it back to you in the studio for right now.
And behind Rondrell, you could see that the flowers were being moved to appropriate positions. Kevin Orper joins me now to talk about that wind that Rondrell mentioned.
Well, yeah, he said there's a pretty significant wind going on, and a lot of times when we have a wind that gusts like that, that's coming out of an area of rain. And so it's a cool wind, and it's coming down out of the clouds where there is rain. So I have the Storm Team 10 storm tracker, and here is a look at Sullivan County.
That doesn't look good.
No, you can see there, you know, it's Highway 41. You can see Sullivan there. And just between Sullivan and Hudsonville, there are areas of rain. And at this point, looking at the Storm Team 10 storm tracker, it looks like at times it could be a little heavier rain. Sometimes some sprinkles, sometimes a little bit heavier. At this point, I'm not detecting a lot of lightning and thunder in this area of rain. However, it looks to me like there is some rain moving into the Sullivan area, and we'll continue to keep track of that with the Storm Team 10 storm tracker. But that's the situation right now. I would say yes, there is some rain possible as we get closer to Sullivan.
Well, thank goodness nothing severe at this point.
Nothing severe.
Hundreds of people lining the procession route, and we certainly don't want them to be in danger.
That's correct.
Okay. I know you're going to go put the forecast together. Our expert Scott had to step out for a phone call. He has been in constant contact with the gentleman who organized the entire procession, so he had to make a call there. We're going to take